What is going on, everybody? It is the boy Minstick. Without you. Back out with another review. And today we are reviewing the final movie in our Final Destination review series. That, of course, being the newest film, Final Destination Bloodlines. But before you get sexual, beginning of the video, so guys, don't forget to subscribe if you do the channel because I'm aware and absolute freedom to also maybe help with the YouTube algorithm recommend the video to more people and maybe they could join. That's the oxygen. And do feel free to comment your thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines down below. But with that being said, guys, let's go into and before we go into as well, this is also going to be building up to a big ranking of all the movies tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But before we get into the actual review itself, let's go quick plot synopsis, shall we? So transition and shoes.
Plagued by a violent and reoccurring nightmare, a college student heads home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle of death and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all.
Alright, so with the Final Destination franchise, I've seen the first two 3 times now, and I've seen the third one twice, but I never had watched 4 or 5. And going into this one specifically, I didn't know what to expect, really, because I found that the last 2 films were definitely the lowest points of the franchise, while still the 5th film I think is not a bad movie. I don't think that's a bad movie at all. But the 4th film, however, that was a bad movie. That's one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Going into this one, I was a little optimistic because early reviews were overwhelmingly positive for this film. And as well, it's the only Final Destination movie to have a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score, or at least last time I checked. So, with that being said, let's just get into the actual review itself, shall we? Alright, so starting off with the good here, and the good... I cannot speak. The number one thing that mostly this franchise gets right, except for the 4th film, is the kills. And I think the kills in here are also quite solid. There's 2 in particular.
The MRI kill and the kill shown in the trailers with the glass shard, I thought were the 2 standouts of the movie, and they were very, very gnarly as well, so delivers for the Carnage Candy fans.
Other thing I gotta applaud is the story in here as well. This is probably, besides after the 1st film, this is probably the 2nd best story of the whole entire franchise, where the 2nd one didn't really have much. It's just the characters are basically escaping death because they avoided death from the 1st film by not taking the positions that a lot of the characters did in the 1st film. 3rd film and 3, 4, and 5 didn't really have much story going for it. But as for this one, I think this one has easily the best story since the 1st film. Where you have this whole entire generation of this family with the one of their relatives that survived death and has survived death for many years, but death is coming back. Not just for the person that evaded death, but the whole entire bloodline of their family. So I think, overall, as a whole, that's a very interesting plot synopsis of the movie. Because most, in the horror genre especially, most movies with the title Bloodlines usually don't end up turning good. But out of the Bloodlines movie, this is probably the best Bloodlines movie out of all the horror franchises. So, I liked the story, the direction that they took in there. As well, plenty of Easter eggs in here, and it's not like, oh my goodness, that's so cool that they mentioned that or whatever. But there are little tiny Easter eggs
From the past film where it's nice for them to bring them back up again, making the official universe all canon together, which I like.
Next thing I'm going to talk about in here is the opening premonition, which we've seen little tiny bits and pieces of it from the trailers, with the particular relative that's the grandmother of this family that's enduring death, that started this death coming after them. I think the opening premonition was truly, truly a great way to start this movie. There's some really gnarly kills in there, and there's one particular visual of the one particular moment of gore in the first premonition of the movie where I literally went like, oh my gosh, that was so gnarly to look at. And it wasn't even a kill, it's just it was something involving a body part that I just found. Oh wow, that looked really realistic. They did a good job at making me wince there. Um, all as well. The probably the best thing about this movie, for me, or at least the number one thing that really I appreciated about this film is the way they handled Tony Todd's character. So we've always seen Tony Todd pop up here and there from in these few movies. Of course, in the first film, the second film, and then lastly in the fifth film before this film came out.
And in this one, it gives us an explanation of how he knows all this stuff about death and how it works, which I'm glad it finally did that. So, and it does a really great job at like closing his character arc and giving the character some explanation in there.
Which, to be honest with you, there's some lines said in his like final lines of his character or whatever, for his final part on screen that got me a little teary-eyed at the end, pretty much, where he basically says like enjoy life or something along those lines that really, really just that man, it's so sad that he's gone. But yeah, it got me in the feels, which I wasn't expecting from a Final Destination movie, but there you go. And the final positive I have in here is the CGI. And as you've seen with my previous movie reviews of this franchise, I've been actually very critical of the CGI every single movie. And this one actually has probably the best CGI of the whole entire franchise. There's, which, yeah, to be fair, that's a kind of an unfair statement, because this is a film that came out 14 years after the last one, so a few years have passed since the last film, where technology is much more advanced and CGI, therefore, is more advanced. So, kind of unfair comparison, but still, I think CGI was a massive step up from these previous movies. So, yeah. Alright, so that is the good done. Now let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. The parts of the film where I'm 50-50 on them. First one I have in here is the acting. Now, I think the main brother and sister do decent enough. The main brother is actually from the Chucky TV series. He played Junior. And he does decent in here. The main lead, as I said before, his sister does decent too. As for everyone else, they're just they're characters that I've seen before in movies like this. So, but there's nothing really stand out about them that makes them pop, unlike those other characters that have had this type of role before in this franchise. Final mixed aspect I have in here is the ending. I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but it's basically, it just does, I don't know how to say it without getting into spoilers, but the way it ends, I understand what they were going for, because it is common throughout this franchise to have that in there, but still, it didn't really quite work for me, unfortunately. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the back, which, first thing to talk about in here is probably my biggest negative of the movie, and this film is the film of this franchise with the most expedition dumping.
Which, to its credit, we've had it before, but in this one, they do it a lot, and I mean a lot compared to last films.
But this might go back to what I was saying about the acting, and maybe the acting is actually pretty good, but the characters in here I didn't really care for either. I mean, I think the most interesting character in here was the grandmother, from her flashbacks and stuff. I found her to be the most interesting, but she's not a key part of the film, which makes you just focus on this brother-sister dynamic, and I don't think it's that strong, really, unfortunately. But for this franchise, you don't really need the best characters. It's still just there to entertain you. Next thing I have in here is it's trying too hard to be funny with its deaths now, which has always been kind of a thing that's happened with this franchise, but to the extent I feel like this one does it the most, where it tries with the deaths to try to make it so gruesome that you can't help but laugh. But I don't know. I don't think you trying to do it over and over again really works with the film, unfortunately. So was a little downered by that, even though I still thought the kills were pretty decent in this one. Next thing, wish, kind of what I was saying earlier, I wish there was more flashbacks with the grandmother in this one, because that in it of itself, the whole entire lore surrounding there, could be very interesting in a spin-off TV series or something similar to that. But other than that, that is just my thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines. Be sure to let me know your thoughts of the film down below. But before we get into the actual ending of the video itself, let's bring out the toxic meter. And I'm going to give this a toxic goodness a B.
Yeah.
And pretty much this is on par with Final Destination 3 for my third favorite. I think still overall marginally as a whole, I would prefer the third film just because maybe nostalgia reasons, and I do like the characters more in that one. But yeah, that's just my thoughts, and be sure to stay tuned tomorrow for the big ranking I've planned. And with that being said, guys, I'll see y'all next one, everybody. Oh, peace.